You damn right. Time for another recruiting hour because we know recruiting never stops. Although for some Longhorn fans right now, it feels like it's in a weird a frozen point. But we're going to talk you through it today, Longhorn fans. Don't worry about it. I'm Chad Hastings. Our man Jeff Ketchum is still dealing with some of the post-storm stuff and moving the family around and all that, trying to get power back. Hopefully he's back home and in a normal situation tomorrow. Of course, we got this guy, Jason Sukamel, managing editor of orangebloods.com. Jared is in the chat, ready to roll. We are glad that you're piling in, and we will get into some good recruiting stuff today. We're going to mainly, we will dig into some Q&A. Jason's got the Q&A article out right now. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that QR code up early. orangebloods.com. It's like 52 days till kick. What are you waiting for? Get signed up for the best coverage of the Longhorns anywhere, including that Q&A article that Jason throws out from time to time, where you just literally, it's just like what it sounds. You just throw questions at him, and he gives you his honest answer. We're going to dig into all of that. But before we do, Jason, another thing that you put on orangebloods.com this week was an update on a receiver. And I think in a way this kind of ties into some of the drama that's been going on around Texas. But we're going to start out with Mr. Andrew Marsh today and get an update on him. What do we need to know?
Yeah, I actually posted that on Orange Bloods late this morning, Chad. And interestingly, like you and I were talking off camera, right? And this wasn't by design, but I've had updates on Andrew Marsh, Dalen McCutcheon, and Kellan Johnson, 3 receivers. I've had updates on all 3 of them this week, and it wasn't because of anything that happened with Decory and more. I just happened to have those interviews and needed to get some content out. So don't anybody think like, oh man, he's pumping all this wide receiver stuff down our throats just because Texas missed on Decory and more. That's not why. It just was a coincidence. But Andrew Marsh, of course, is the Rivals 100 wide receiver out of Katy, Jordan, and you know, Rivals has him, Chad, ranked higher than any other service. Rivals has him at number 41 in the country. So he's just outside of that 5-star, area, because that's usually what, 32, 34, 33, somewhere around there. But so he's just outside of there. But I tell you what, Rivals has him higher than anybody else. I said this on Orange Bloods. I'm not sure Rivals doesn't have him underranked, which means everybody else has him significantly underranked. Every time I've seen Andrew Marsh, that dude just dominates, and he makes it look easy. That included at the Rivals 5-star event in Jacksonville a couple weeks ago, where he's matched up against the best of the best. Dude, he was blowing the doors off of people and just making it look easy, make big catches downfield. Guys couldn't stay with him, his physicality, contested catches, did it all. But, what you need to know about Andrew Marsh, he did take 5 official visits in June. And he's been saying all along, hey, I'm going to commit in November. I'm going to commit in November. I always get him confused. That's Veterans Day, correct?
Right. November 11th is Veterans Day. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I always get that in Memorial Day. I should know that. But Veterans Day, because his father passed away. Unfortunately, his father is a veteran. So,
okay.
Was a veteran, I should say. But so he's always been looking at Veterans Day in November for his commitment announcement. He's now looking at maybe moving things up to an August commitment, possibly. So maybe getting it out of the way before his senior season. If he does that, that's a pretty big change, first off. And if he does, I don't think that necessarily bodes well for Texas, because he visited Michigan on his last official visit, and there's a lot of Michigan buzz coming out of that trip, okay? And we talked about it, and Andrew said as much. Hey, it was a really good visit. He likes their coaches. They're selling him on, hey, we are going to throw the ball a lot more with this new coaching staff at Michigan, and we need you to be our bell cow, Andrew Marsh. We need you to come in, and we need a guy like you so we can get this passing game jump-started. And that really hit home with Andrew Marsh. So I think if he goes ahead and commits in August, Michigan would probably be the pick. If he waits it out, then I think that's good for Texas. They can keep chipping away there. Now, he did visit Texas. I think it was June 14th. So, a little less than a month ago. Loved that visit too. He said, man, he's been there like, 10 times I think we've got in our database, something crazy.
Yeah, he's one of our world travelers, correct?
He is the world traveler. That is, I always say, there's never a weekend when Andrew isn't somewhere, it seems like. But he said, hey, that was a good visit. It's always good to get down there and see the coaches and talk to those dudes again. I said, what was the message from the Texas coaches? I thought this was an interesting quote, and I don't have it in front of me. I should. But he said the quote was something like, there are 3 guys in the state that they're targeting, and I'm one of those 3. Well, there's more than 3 if we're being honest, but I think maybe what they were relaying to him is, hey, we've got 3 of you kind of on a certain tier, right? Marsh being one of those guys, DeCorey Moore being one of those guys, and Lockett probably being the 3rd. But they said, hey, we've been recruiting you a long time. We really want you in this program. We really could use you in this program. So, I think Texas is certainly in the mix. I think it's Michigan's race to lose right now. Texas is in the mix. We'll see where it goes from here.
Well, dadgummit, Jason, I was going to tie it in perfectly with our man, Money B. He came in, he said, I need some good news, Jason. We'll find some, Money B. I promise we will find some. It just might not be there.
I got while Money B's in the chat, I'm pretty sure it was Money B one time. Well, it was when I was going to New York, right? And Money B's like, I got you covered. I'll go out there and interview people. Money B, you and I need to talk. So, Chad, you said recruiting never stops, right? Can I get on my soapbox for a minute before we transition? So sometimes I like to tell these stupid personal stories for no reason, but so I have to be incredibly particular and selective when I try to take vacation. Okay, I usually take 2, maybe. I think last year I took 3, and it's the first time in 20-something years I've ever taken more than 2 weeks of vacation. So, anyways, I've got to be incredibly selective. I can't do it in June, obviously, right? Because it's official visits. July is usually pretty safe, but now you got all these commitments. So the first couple weeks of July are out, right? So this time I was like, okay, I'm going to be strategic. I'm going to take it the end of July, but I'm going to come back. The dead period lifts on July 25th, a Thursday. Mm-hmm. I'm going to come back on July 25th because Texas will have their pool party on the 26th or the 27th.
Right.
So my wife, myself, all 4 of our kids, and 3 other families are all going to Mexico, coming back July 25th, Thursday. Thought I was safe, right?
Uh-huh.
They scheduled the damn pool party for Thursday, July 25th, the day I'm flying home. And I'm like, I am not. My wife's like, well, I might have to fly home early. And I'm like, I'm not leaving my wife and kids in Mexico without me for a day. So
don't do that.
I've got to scramble around. So Chad, if you're not busy on July 25th, I may be hitting you up to stalk campus for me. But
I will keep that in mind. I'll check the calendar for you. Check the calendar for you.
Sounds good. So.
By the way, someone double checking on Catch and Power. JW Catch he's believing that they do have power, and he's hoping to be back tomorrow. Back to the house tomorrow. So
I saw like when y'all were doing your noon show that he's in a hotel. What do you know? What hotel or where he is?
He was actually in the Austin area, like Cedar Park, because they could not find anything that had power.
He had me hotel hunting for him on Monday or whatever, and I thought I found some in College Station, but I was wondering where he ended up going. So he's in Austin.
It ended up being the Austin area. Just kind of crazy stuff. All right, so there's the Andrew Marsh update. Maybe not the good news Money B was looking for overall, but something to keep an eye on there, and the fact that it's maybe moving back to a possible August commitment there. You mentioned a couple other names, Jason. What about, you said Kellan Johnson's name? Yeah. Let's get an update on him.
Well, that's a little bit of good news, Money B. Not great, but a little bit of good news on Kellan Johnson. So he was going to commit on Monday, okay, and then the hurricane blows through. Mm-hmm. So then he pushed it back to Wednesday. I called Kellan yesterday, and first off, shout out to Kellan. I love that dude. He's like, hey, I'm going to hit you right back. And I was like, nah, probably not. But he did. He called me back. He always does. He's in the middle of a hurricane. They still don't have power. He said, we may not have power for several more days in Hitchcock. I said, what are y'all going to do? And he said, well, some friends of his have power, or their family, so they're going to go stay with them. But anyways, because of all this issues from the hurricane, including a loss of power for Kellan and his family, he's pushing his decision back till next week. Why is that maybe a bit of good news? Well, if he would have committed on Wednesday, today, right? Today's Wednesday. Yep, got to get my head straight. Or Monday, I'm pretty sure it would have been Texas A&M. But it's really, really close. He and I were talking yesterday, and he's like, man, it's really close. They're technically 5 schools, but it's really down to 2. It's Texas or Texas A&M. And even he said to me, he goes, you know what? Maybe this is kind of a blessing in disguise because it gives me a little bit more time to think and kind of sort this out. He's still a little bit unsure, I think. So I think had he kind of forced himself into that Monday or Wednesday timeline, I think it probably would have been Texas A&M. That would have been the pick. That's who my future cast is on. But now he doesn't have a date for next week or anything. It could be Monday. It could be next Friday. I don't know. But that gives him a little bit more time to think, gives the Texas coaches a little more time to kind of keep checking in and, maybe tell him something he hasn't heard previously and get that pendulum to kind of swing back UT's direction. So I guess, Money B, if you're looking for a little bit of good news, it's that Texas is still in the mix and that door is open just a little bit going into next weekend's announcements. Arkansas is in there, USC is in there, but again, really, it's going to be Texas or Texas A&M. I'm 99% positive of that. Right now, as we talk, I would favor Texas A&M, but that thing could change before next week, so it's pretty close.
Jason, I feel for these kids that are trying to decide between the rivals when it comes down to that. Any rival, whether it's Texas A&M, it's Auburn, Alabama, whatever. If there's a kid that legitimately might not have grown up with either one and really does feel like it's a 50-50 thing. I mean, it's even with transfer portal, still a big decision of which of those paths are you going to go down, which side of a rivalry. So
you're going to piss off half the state either way, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, half your state's going to hate you. Like, that's not what you want.
It's a shame because Kelshon's such an awesome kid, so I hope Texas fans don't pile on if he goes to A&M or vice versa. And I can't ask this question now, but I do want to. If he ends up picking A&M, I'm so curious as to the reasoning because to me, maybe it's playing time. I don't know. Maybe he just has something with the coaches there, but Texas has told him like, hey, we think you are Xavier Worthy-like, okay? They have the same frame. They're both speed guys. That's what their game is built on. So if from an outsider's perspective, I'm thinking, okay, Sark's offense against Collin Klein, who, they're going to throw the ball, but I don't know that I'd consider that a high-flying offense necessarily that they're going to run at Texas A&M. Texas just had a first-round draft pick in the guy that you compare favorably to. So if he picks A&M, it's going to be interesting to me to hear the reasons. What did A&M offer you that beat what Texas offered you? Because to me, it looks like Texas has a pretty good selling point there. But for whatever reason, it seems like A&M has a bit more momentum right now.
Yeah, the only thing, Jason, I might bring up on the Texas side on the negative front when I'm reading through your Q&A with him and some of the quotes, when he mentions, I want to get on the field and I want to play early.
Well, that was Andrew Marsh. Yeah, that was Marsh.
I'm sorry, that was Marsh. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
sorry,
you're right. That's a good point, and I should have mentioned that. When that quote to me, Chad, that doesn't scream Texas, does it? Right? That's another reason I'm thinking Michigan.
That's right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mixed up. My bad. I mixed that up. Johnson,
it's okay. Hey, I do it all the time, dude. But yeah, that does. And I don't even know what Michigan's depth chart is, but I don't think it's quite as stacked as Texas because the fact that they're telling him, dude, we don't have a guy like you. We need you to kind of be our ringleader. No offense to Andrew Marsh. Like I said, I think he's a borderline. I think he's a 5-star type talent. So I'm not slamming Andrew Marsh in any way. But Texas has those kinds of talent on the roster already, right? So to me, that screams more Michigan than it does Texas. Yeah.
Okay. So then back to Johnson to make sure we're clear here on Kelshon. So as you look at it, you think the Texas offense and how they would use him would fit better than what they might have in College Station?
I don't know. I don't know exactly what they're going to run. I just compare it to like what he ran at Kansas State and stuff, right?
Sure.
It's a little more ground and pound running quarterbacks, whereas Texas, they're going to throw the ball around a little bit more. Sark loves to run the ball, of course, but they're going to throw the ball around. Sark's history with wide receivers, he just had a receiver in the same mold as Kelshon. The proof's in the pudding. Who knows? A&M may go out and throw the ball 50 times a year this year and surprise everybody. But to me, the Texas offense, you've seen it, right? And you're like, okay, that would be a great fit. But, I'm sure A&M, Kelshon's a good enough athlete too. You can find other creative ways to get him the ball and jet sweeps probably and do some other kind of gadget type things. So, who knows what they're selling them on in terms of their offensive package.
Yeah. And it's a good point to think of. You're mentioning Collin Klein. One of the things he's going to have to prove at A&M is that there's some dynamic quality to that offense. Because if you're a badass receiver that reminds anybody on any level of Xavier Worthy, the next words out of your mouth are not usually going to be Collin Klein in terms of an offensive style.
Yeah. Listen, what he's run previously, it's not the sexiest offense, but hey, it works, right? They have some pretty good teams in Manhattan. So
that's true. Yeah. It's just a different way to do business.
Yeah, it is.
So in terms of receivers, we did get I tell you what, we got a super chat in. So we always say they go right to the top. So Jason, let's throw this in real quick. Jason to Jason, $4.99 super chat. any behind-the-scenes scuttlebutt that Sark and company will consider a change to their approach. Pitch seems to be failing on almost all major targets. Wow, Jason getting right to the point.
Yeah, that's our Orange Bloods dude, Jay Hublinski there. Not that I've heard, Jason, that, nothing. I'm sure they'll probably look at things later in the year and maybe tweak some things, but the die is kind of cast for this 2025 group. I mean, they've got that pool party on the 25th. So, who knows? Maybe they try a different messaging at that. I'll be curious to hear that. Someone in the chat actually asked, what's the latest on Michael Terry? He is coming to that pool party on the 25th, by the way. But, yeah, they're going to have to tweak some things. I don't know what it is. I mean, I keep getting this question. What's going on with Texas's recruiting? Why are they missing on these guys? And like I've said, I think the answer kind of varies from guy to guy. Maybe it's NIL for one. Maybe it's playing time. Maybe a certain guy just relates to an assistant coach at a different school more. It's hard to really put a finger on one specific reason, but, Texas is selling, hey, development, obviously academics, city of Austin. They've had a championship program now from last year, and culture. And those are all really good selling points. So, I mean, what else are you going to sell if you change your pitch? The only thing I would change is that, Sark and this staff as a whole, they kind of have a laid back attitude in recruiting, right? And maybe that's just Sark's nature. I mean, he's a West Coast dude. He seems like a pretty chill dude, just what I know of him. I think that's why people love him. But in recruiting, maybe you got to be a little bit more aggressive and push for those early commitments and say, no, we need you on board now. I don't know. I mean, in the past, they're kind of like, hey, take your time. We'll flip you late. Or even they're committed guys. They're like, hey, if you want to take some visits, that's cool. We know you're going to come back. Well, I don't know. Maybe they need to be a little bit more aggressive in trying to get early commitments and lock those things up. I don't know. I mean, listen, they've had back-to-back top 5 classes, so I'm not going to nitpick them too much. But depending on how things go, maybe the same thing happens this year. Maybe all this worrying in July ends up being for nothing. Maybe they end up flipping some of these guys that we've talked about that have gone elsewhere. And then we're like, okay, they don't need to change anything. Just keep doing what you're doing. So I don't really have an answer for that, Jason. We'll see what they do moving forward. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, Jason, the only thing I would advise Sark to change would be the mix in less of the angry response tweets. Even if you didn't think you were angry, just don't do that. And then reach out to the guys when you can, communicate with them, make sure you're good with the Decorian Moores and the Petty Johns of the world. Make sure they know that wasn't about them. That's the one thing I would make sure to do at this point. Thank you, Jason, for the $4.99 on that super chat. If you want to throw in a super chat, it's just like that. It'll go right to the top of the list. We start with a little recruiting, some updates on receivers. Before we leave receivers, Jason, South KMX, which sounds like a radio station we need to be listening to, says, what's the latest on Michael Terry? Any updates?
Well, it's the same thing. I haven't heard much new over the last few weeks. I think that's still Texas and Oregon. Texas A&M's hanging around there, but I still keep hearing Texas and Oregon, okay? Like I said, he's coming up on the 25th for that pool party. That's a good sign for Texas. I was actually talking to someone yesterday. I thought it was interesting. I was a little bit surprised, and I even told this person who knows Michael directly and knows his family. I was like, that's just interesting to me that he's coming up. I don't see the need. I mean, he just took an official visit there. I think it was June 14th is when he took his visit, I believe. So, what are you going to see different in this pool party? Also, there's going to be a lot of underclassmen guys there too. So it's not as geared for the 2025 recruits, but this person said, hey, Michael and his family are big on keeping their word. They feel like Texas has kept their word to them throughout this recruitment. They've indicated that they would be there, so they're going to keep their word and show up. So I said, hey, good for Michael Terry, good for his family. But, I still feel like that's going to be a Texas and Oregon battle. That's all we keep hearing. One person said, hey, maybe 60-40 in favor of Texas, but, I don't have a great rate. I like putting that out there. I would probably predict Texas, but Oregon's got me a little bit gun shy on making any predictions that are not in favor of Oregon, right? So if it comes down to Texas and Oregon, I think you'd be smart to be a little bit nervous, sure.
Yeah, I know we always, you always like to have the obvious of if you're a Texas fan, you don't want to hear about Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, and certainly not OU or A&M. But man, it's starting to be the word Oregon that you don't want to hear right now.
Every time I look up, like yesterday, there's DJ Pickett, who's a 5-star safety out of Florida. There was I don't remember, Crystal Ball or Futurecast, whatever. One of those things came in favor of Oregon. I'm like, holy cow, man. Michael Fusi wants to go visit Oregon. So, Chad.
Right? I mean, come on.
Yeah, dude. So, like, yeah, Oregon has become the new thorn in everybody's side. Yeah.
Exactly. Not just about fear of a visit to Norman or College Station. Don't let them get to Eugene. Good grief. Don't let them get to the Nike factory. All right, Jason, are we done with some wide receiver stuff? You want to get into a little Q&A here?
One more. Dalen McCutcheon, the receiver out of Lucas Lovejoy, who I'm so excited to watch because Todd Dodge is taking over that program. So I want to see what kind of season they have and McCutcheon has in his offense. But he's set to announce next week. He's he's not tipping his hand at all. I mean, Texas is in there, of course, but I think it's going to be Florida State. That's my gut. That's my guess. But he is set to announce this week. With Texas missing on DeCorian Moore, that could shift everything. I mean, maybe they go back to Dalen and really hit him up harder. So we'll see what he does next week. I don't think right now it'll be Texas. And then one more name I want to mention. I think maybe I mentioned this earlier in the week. I can't even remember. But Dallas Wilson is a receiver out of Florida, committed to Oregon, right? He's a big-time receiver. He is number 26 nationally. So he will be a 5-star if he holds that ranking. I have never talked to Dallas Wilson. I've reached out to him. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. He was supposed to be at the Rivals 5-star. He ended up not showing, which was disappointing. There's grapevine chatter, and I've heard through a source that Texas loves him and Texas feels really good about their shot. Okay. Now, that's to me seems a little weird because the kid's never visited UT, but for whatever reason, there's some confidence there. Maybe just whatever conversations I've had behind the scenes. DeCorian Moore goes to Oregon. Does Dallas Wilson look at that and say, okay, awesome, we're going to line up side by side. Okay. We're going to be a two-headed monster. Or does Dallas Wilson look at that and say, hold on, man, I want to be the big guy, the big fish in this group. DeCorian's here, maybe I'm going to look around a little bit. So that's a name we haven't talked a lot about just because, like I said, he doesn't do a lot of interviews, but, we may be, Chad, maybe September, October, November, we'll look back and say, hey, remember that video we did in July? Keep an eye on that name, Dallas Wilson.
Interesting. Dallas Wilson. Yeah. And I think this chatter speaks for a lot of people right now. Tired of Oregon with 3 exclamation points. My goodness. All right. So
we're going to fan bases are tired of Oregon right now. It's not just Texas. I promise.
Yeah, right. Not just Longhorn fans. We will get into some Q&A stuff off of Jason's article at orangebloods.com real quick before we do it. Thanks to those of you who are in that Specs chat. I'm seeing damn near 860 people in there right now. We appreciate you. And so does Specs. Go see them.
Spec's same-day delivery can save the day with our Spec's app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Spec's. Cheers to savings.
And remember, if you get us a super chat, it'll go right to the top of the list. And just a reminder, head on over to orangebloods.com. Jason's got that Q&A article that hits every couple weeks for your questions. And we're going to go over some of those right now. Jason, this is one of the bigger questions, I think, out there. We talked about it on some of the shows this week. Just the basic question of final class ranking. It's such a weird hunk of math to look at when you see Texas right now, like 32 or whatever in the Rivals rankings, but we're having the discussion about, can that class go all the way to, top 5? So give me an idea. And Ketch talked about it today on the 12 o'clock show about just the fine line between a class that's 20 or a class that's 5. It's really not as much as people might think, but for you, just how much of a jump could we see between now and December?
Yeah, I can. For Texas is the number 33 class right now. Okay, and every time I do these Q&As, I solicit questions on Orange Bloods. I say, hey guys, send me questions. People post them on the message board or the email them to me. I can pretty much guarantee every week I'm going to get the question, what's our final class rank going to be? Who's our next commitment? Okay, those two are every single week. I get those questions. Okay, I'd be curious. I didn't get to see. I watched a couple of minutes of yours and Ketch's noon show, but I didn't get to watch a lot of it. So I'm curious. I'll talk now. I want to hear what Ketch had to say to you. So My prediction, I've been saying all year, top five, top five, top five. That's going to happen. I kind of backtracked a little bit this week, and I was like, I can't with a straight face predict top five after Lamont Rogers and DeCorian Moore and Riley Pedan all committed elsewhere, and maybe Kellan Johnson maybe goes to A&M. I don't know. Fusi is still up in the air. He's a wild card. I mean, if you're going to get in that top five status, you're going to have 1, 2 5-star recruits, and I don't know where those come from right now. I mean, maybe Fusi, maybe Dallas Wilson, who we just talked about. I mean, it can happen, but I said if I say top five, I feel like that's me talking through some burnt orange lenses, and I'm basically telling you guys what you want to hear. I still think it's going to be a very, very good class. So I predicted top 10, but if you're asking me to bet money and say, okay, 3 to 7 or 8 to 12 range, I'd probably take the 8 to 12 range right now based on the way things have gone. Now, a lot of that can change, and including that's so hard to make that call right now because somebody who's ranked 170th in the country might shoot up to 45th in the country, so the rankings will change. Obviously commitments will come in and commitments will go. So there's a lot that goes into that. So we're just kind of big picture speaking it right now. I don't think this class will be as highly ranked as the last couple, but I still think it's going to be a very, very good class. And I'm curious, I don't know if Ketch made a prediction, Chad, or what was his stat?
I don't know that I would say it was a hard target prediction. The sense he gave is his message to Texas fans are that a top 5 class is still attainable. And his point was to get there, one of the big things they'll need is a couple of 5 stars for sure. And to him, that was still attainable, whether that's, it's like Fusi and Lockett or French would get you there, right? That's a couple of 5 stars. So I think in his mind, it is still attainable to get there. And his overall comments today were that, looking at the rankings right now in July and really trying to get freaked out about it, it's meaningless to him. Like, don't worry about it now because there's,
I wouldn't say it's meaningless, but there are bigger things to be different things to be worried about. I mean, if we look like right now, I said Texas is 33. I mean, listen, Ohio State's number 1 by a long shot. They've got 23 commitments. They already have 4 5-star commitments. Okay. So, I mean, I wouldn't say they're meaningless. You'd much rather be where Ohio State is right now than Texas, of course, but I do agree with everything else. I think they're going to need a couple 5 stars if they want to get in that top 5 range. And I certainly think it's possible. The guys you mentioned, and there's different options. So they can certainly get there, but they took a little bit of a hit last week and last weekend for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's continue to roll through some Q&A here. Back to the receiver discussion. This is one of those questions that pops up. I think people could understand how it would. Does losing Moore help with French and Lockett? So these are we were talking at one point, Jason, about could Texas get all 3 of these guys? So if we assume that DeCorian Moore really does love Oregon and he ends up in Eugene, talk about French and Lockett for Texas.
I haven't talked to either player since the DeCorian Moore announcement. So this is just me kind of reading the tea leaves, haven't done this for a long time. But my answer to that is yes, absolutely. I think it helps with French and Lockett. We've been hearing those guys talk about playing, all 3 of them playing together. I never believed it, Chad. I've said that. That's probably not going to happen.
Right.
And DeCorian was the big fish. I thought if DeCorian went to Texas, maybe they get one of those other 2, but not all 3 of them. Well, now DeCorian being out of the picture, so to speak, obviously that could change. But with him being committed to Oregon, I think the odds of French and Lockett playing together go up. In fact, we had heard some scuttlebutt that French and Lockett were not going to play together. Okay. So, and that was partially because people thought DeCorian Moore was coming to Texas. Well, now I think there's a chance that French and Lockett do play together. So just losing DeCorian Moore, I think absolutely it helps with Jamie French and Khalil Lockett. And honestly, as good as DeCorian Moore is, and listen, I said he's probably the best receiver I've ever covered since Roy Williams, right? Best receiver prospect. I think he's that good. As good as he is, if you can get Jamie French and Khalil Lockett and you lose DeCorian Moore, that's a pretty fair trade. I mean, it's 2 for 1. I mean, that's a really good trade-off for Texas. So we'll see what happens. There's still work to do on both of those guys. I mean, neither French nor Lockett are a guarantee for Texas by any means right now. So they're going to have to continue to work on those dudes. Both those guys are going to announce in August. So we'll have our decisions coming up. Khalil Lockett's, I think, August 7th. And then French, I believe, is August 30th off the top of my head. It's the very end of August. So we'll have our answer, before the summer's over on both those guys. But yeah, I think Texas's chances of landing both of them definitely go up with DeCorian Moore committing to Oregon.
Yeah. And remember, kids, Khalil Lockett, one highlight. It's all you need. Just watch that first highlight. You will understand why people like Khalil Lockett. And as long as we're talking about that guy, in fact, all three of these guys also apply to this next question, Jason. So here you go. Q&A from the dark side. This is not where you normally live. You like to find some positivity. This is the question about, okay, Jason, what if all three of those big three wide receivers spurns us? A worried Texas fan wonders, what do you do then? I guess we've kind of discussed a little bit of what you do, right?
Well, yeah, but a lot of those names are going to be off the board probably by the time all three of those guys commit at the end of August. There's a chance Marsh is, Kellan Johnson is, French and Lockett, would be off the board. So the question, is there a chance all three spurn Texas? Yeah, there's a chance. I mean, I'm not betting on that. I would not predict that right now, but there is certainly a chance. I mean, Khalil Lockett has 4 or 5 schools he's still considering, including LSU and Miami. Those are the big threats for Texas. Okay. No, I'm sorry. I said Khalil Lockett. I'm sorry. Jamie French. Those are the big threats for Jamie French. I think Miami, Tennessee's in there. I don't think they're a factor. I think it's going to be Miami or Texas. Maybe LSU is in that mix for Jamie French. Khalil Lockett, Texas A&M, Alabama, LSU are all in the mix. So these are not slam dunks for Texas by any means. If you're asking me, I guess a good question if I'm asking myself, what are the higher chances that Texas lands 2 of those 3, okay, or Texas misses on all 3? It's really close, man. I mean, that's a coin flip answer for me. I'd probably say the odds are higher that Texas lands 2 of the 3. But missing out on all 3 of them is not out of the question. Again, I'm not predicting that. So I'm not a doomsdayer here, but I'm not predicting that. But it's certainly possible. I mean, those dudes are still looking at other schools, and they're really good programs still recruiting both of those receivers. Obviously, DeCorian's already committed to Oregon.
And like Jason said, those other 2 guys, DeCorian Moore now committed to Oregon, and the other 2 will commit in August if the plans hold. All right, Jason, speaking of recruiting, somebody's got a flipping question here. One guy ends up committing to Missouri, an SEC school. The other guy ended up committing to Ohio State. Texas fans would like both of them, but this fan is saying more chance of flipping Lamont Rogers than Pedan.
Yeah, that's a tough one to answer in my Q&A. I said, of those 2, I feel 100% certain Lamont Rogers is more likely to flip his commitment. Okay. But I don't think right now it would be Texas. If let's say he flipped in a month, I mean, it would probably be Oklahoma, maybe Texas A&M. I don't think Texas would be the choice. Okay. So that's one way to look at it. And then I think Pedan is probably more likely to keep his commitment to Ohio State. So I don't really know how to handicap that because I feel differently about each guy. I guess if I'm picking one that's more likely, I'd probably go with Riley Pedan. Maybe he just decides he wants to stay closer to home because if it's not Ohio State, I think it would wind up, I think Texas would probably be the choice for that second school. But he seems really happy, he and his family, with that Ohio State commitment. So I think it's going to be hard to flip Pedan. I think Lamont Rogers is a much stronger chance of flipping. People in Austin think he'll probably not wind up at Missouri. Some people even close to Lamont are like, yeah, we don't know if he'll end up holding on to that commitment to Missouri. So I think Lamont's going to flip, but Texas may not be the choice. Now, again, that can change. Hey, if Michael Fusi winds up going somewhere else, then maybe Rogers is a bigger priority for Texas. NIL becomes a factor. There's so many moving parts in these things now. NIL can throw curveballs at the last minute. But right now, I guess I'd say Pedan over Lamont Rogers, even though I think Rodgers is much more likely to flip his commitment. So it's a kind of a weird way to answer that question.
Yeah.
Hey, Chad, there are a couple good questions from Vivek and David in the chat. If we want to pop those up, I can address a couple of those.
Yeah, I think I grabbed them. Double.
And I'm not crying, by the way, viewers. I have had allergies kicking my butt all day today, so I apologize for constantly.
Let me see if these are the ones you're looking at. I saw one on tight end from Vivek. Jason, is Townsen an elite tight end prospect on Armstrong's level to you?
You know what, Vivek? He's going to announce next week, Nick Townsen from Decaney. And Catch might disagree with me. I think most of the rankings would disagree with me, but my answer is yes, he is on that level. And I'll tell you why. Keati Armstrong is a grown man, okay? I mean, he walks through the door, you're going to take notice of that dude. He looks like an NFL player. But I think Nick Townsen is more of an explosive athlete, okay? And I love guys who can run and jump, and that's not to say Keati can, but Keati's just so big, he just kind of outmuscles guys, and that's at the high school level, it's easy for him. That's going to be tougher to do in the collegiate level. Keati moves well. I'm not saying he doesn't, but I don't think he's is the caliber of just the raw natural athlete that Nick Townsen is. So, hey, I might eat my words here. And this is not homerism. This is not me saying it because Keati's committed to Texas A&M. I actually like Nick Townsend's upside a little bit better. So to answer the question, Vivek, yeah, I think he's every bit of in that conversation with Keati Armstrong.
Vivek, thank you for that one. Speaking of pass catchers, back to a receiver question from David. How would you rank the receivers among this group, Jason? Oh, they always want the rankings. Moore, French, Lockett, Marsh, Johnson. You've talked about all five of them on the show today. Rank them.
Well, you start with DeCorey Moore. That's easy for number one, right? And then it gets tricky after that. I mean, you can make a case for a lot of these dudes for that number 2 spot. I would probably go Jamie French number 2. And I think most people would rank them in the order David listed them.
Okay.
I'm going to go a little curveball, man. And I almost would put Andrew Marsh second, but I'm putting him third.
No.
Yeah, I think Andrew Marsh is that good. And then I got Kellan Lockett, who I love as a player. So this is not me slamming Kellan Lockett. And I love Kellan Johnson too. So, but I'd probably put Kellan fifth. He's a little bit more undersized, but boy, he can run. He probably is the fastest of that bunch. The Koreans are really fast as well. But I really like Andrew Marsh. Like, you could probably talk me in if you said you put him second after DeCorey Moore. I'd be okay. I get it. I can see it. But I would probably go Moore, French, Marsh, Lockett, Johnson. But I mean, Moore is on a level of his own in my eyes. Those other four are really tightly bunched. I mean, those are really, really good receivers that I think any program in the country would be happy to take any of them.
David, thank you for that chat. Little quick follow-up here from Vivek. I consider it a major fail if A&M wins out on Lockett over us. They have an archaic run-heavy OC, and they are still out recruiting us, ? Would you agree with that thought from Vivek?
That would be, yeah, it's kind of like I said with Kellan Johnson. I mean, I think if he committed this week, it would have been A&M. And to me, that's an interesting choice. I mean, listen, these kids got to do what they think's best for themselves. I'm not one to interject my thoughts. I would never say that to these kids because I'm not here to influence these kids. But yeah, I think so. I've always said, if I'm a wide receiver or a quarterback, other than Lincoln Riley, who's better to play for than Steve Sarkisian? So yeah, it is interesting if A&M wins out over Texas on some receivers. Yeah, that's interesting to me, and I'll be curious to hear some reasoning if and when that happens.
Yeah. And kind of back to that thing we said earlier about Colin Klein and the argument he's trying to make. He's not just trying to speak through Connor Wigman. He's speaking to those receivers around the country through Connor Wigman because, what does a guy like Lockett think of both of those programs? That's interesting stuff, Vivek. Thank you so much for that. Real quick, Brandon just has a general thought. A lot of folks thinking along these lines. Some of y'all doubting Sark too much. Stop worrying until signing day gets here in December and enjoy wondering how Sark pulled another top 5 class out of nowhere at the last minute. Jason, I think the key element to all this discussion is, does Sark just consider, if that's the pattern, does he just consider this the pattern that works and we should all chill out? Or is it a pattern that's worth looking at and maybe tweaking? I think that's the ultimate discussion here.
Yeah. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the coaches' meeting. That's a good question. I mean, it's a pattern that has worked, right, so far. But it's a little bit of a risky pattern, isn't it? Because what happens someday there's going to be a year when these guys don't flip for whatever reason. Is this the year that guys don't flip? I don't know. But, we'll find out in November and December, like Brandon said. But it's a pattern that works, so we shouldn't doubt it necessarily. But it's a little bit high risk, high reward too, potential. So, we'll find out later in this year if it's a pattern that's going to continue to work this year.
No doubt. All right, let's see. I think we may have had one more. We did that. Okay. You know what? Let's just go ahead and throw out a simple one. Michael Fusi, Jason. What is the latest?
You know what? That's sad. I gotta remember, what did I write in my? I gotta find out what I wrote in my Q&A. Okay, well, Fusi, okay, that's right. He has an announcement for Friday.
There's the tweet,
right on time. You and I hadn't.
There it is, right?
People got excited thinking maybe he's going to commit. I'm not expecting that to be a commitment based on what I'm hearing. I think he's going to formally issue some favorites, but I don't mind saying it. It's going to be Texas A&M, and Oklahoma are the three schools in contention there, with the understanding that he may visit Oregon in the fall. So I'm not going to discount Oregon, right?
Come on, Michael,
dude. So, but it's not going to be a commitment on Friday. That's not what we're expecting. That's not what we're hearing. But I don't. If I'm saying Fusi to Texas, if I'm saying Texas or the field right now, man, I've been on the Texas bandwagon. I've had my future cast in forever. I was in a good mood when I wrote my story, and I said we need some positive news, right? So I still predicted Texas just because I said they cannot afford to lose Michael Fusi. Okay, whatever your NIL number was on Michael Fusi, you better raise it after DeCorian Moore, Riley Pedan.
Yeah.
A, he's a fantastic player. B, Texas needs a big win like a 5-star Michael Fusi. So I'm still predicting Texas just because I just feel like Texas's backs are against the wall. They have to win this one, and they usually end up finding a way to do those, win those kinds of recruitments, where those must win, like a Colin Simmons type. So I'm still predicting Fusi to Texas, but boy, I'm a little scared. I'm a lot more scared about that prediction now than I was 2-3 months ago when I put my future cast in.
And again, we're recording this Wednesday. Friday the 12th is when whatever that announcement is from Fusi, we'll get it. Jason, just to be clear, I've heard you and Ketch both talk about you thought it might have been a Texas OU battle at one point, and then A&M's also in the mix. Has Fusi officially acknowledged any teams or not?
Not officially.
So that could be what we're looking at.
Yeah, listen, Mike won't care. He's a pretty chill dude. He has not released that like on Twitter or anything, released in a statement on the record, but he's told me. I mean, he's told me, yeah, it's those three. So, but hey, again, that was 2 weeks ago or whatever. So Oregon gets in the mix, or, USC or whoever else, those things can change, dude. These things can change in a hurry. But yeah, he's kind of told me off the record. He's like, yeah, it's cool. It's going to be probably one of those three. So
Friday could just be the official social media moment of throw out Bevo, Reveille, and a chuck wagon and say, this is what I'm trying to figure out.
Could be. And maybe a duck in there too. So
no ducks. No ducks. We're done. No, not that. All right. Real quick before we get out of here, another Q&A that somebody wanted you to know. Here's what you say about the next commitment, right? Which of the following will commit to Texas? Fusi, Townsen, Sanders, Terry, Cunningham, Lockett. Which ones do you think end up as Longhorns if you had to do it today, Jason?
Yeah, and I kind of hedged my bets on that one. I said, hey, I think Texas gets I said, hey, can I just say all of them and just we'll call it good news, and I'll say they get all of them. But
now that's the good news Money B was looking for.
Yeah, there we go. That's a great way to end it. But I think I think objectively you can make a case that they get easily 4 out of the 6. Jonathan Cunningham actually is going to announce his decision on Friday. He's officially down to Texas, TCU, and Utah. I don't think Utah is a big player there. I think it's going to be Texas or TCU on Friday. I mentioned Fusi, Nick Townsen, the tight end. I like Texas's chances there, although it's not the slam dunk maybe some people are talking about. DJ Sanders, I know there's a lot of pro-Texas buzz, but I still think A&M and schools like Michigan are hanging around there, but that's a winnable one. Michael Terry, Texas, and I think Oregon. I think it'll come down to those. Khalil Lockett, I mentioned, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. So which of the following, I'm not going to sit here and make a prediction on each one, but I think Texas probably gets, 4 out of the 6. I think that's a good safe number. Which one, there's still some room for movement on some of those dudes. So it's hard to, I don't want to stick my neck out too far and say, okay, DJ Sanders is committing here. And then I end up being wrong, in a couple of days and people hold it against me. But I would think getting 4 out of those 6 is a reasonable expectation. And if you said, hey, 3 months from now, Texas swept the board and got all 6 of them, not out of the question. Certainly not out of the question at all.
There you go. We appreciate those questions coming in on the Q&A. Again, a reminder that full Q&A article is up for you at orangebloods.com. Also, the update article about Andrew Marsh and kind of what he's thinking and what the Texas coaches talked to him about the last time he communicated with them. It is all there. Orangebloods.com. We're recording on a Wednesday. Remember, Thursday night is War Room night. Next week is SEC Media Days up in Dallas. So you're absolutely going to want to be on orangebloods.com for that. All the threads, all the information, all the stuff coming out of Dallas. Texas goes on Wednesday. If you haven't heard, Sark will be speaking to the group media about 2:20 in the afternoon. The players are after that. 3 players per team. It's Quinn Ewers, it's Kelvin Banks, and it is 1 defensive player, Jahdae Barron, on the defensive side for Texas. Those are the 3 that are going. Arch Manning is in the video game, but he's not going to Dallas. Just to clarify. QB2 will not be going with QB1.
Is Chad Hastings the bigger question? You're going up there, right?
I am. Yeah. I'm going. I'm so excited. I'm going to be the only person in attendance, I dare say, that will be wearing a burnt orange shirt the day Texas goes and a maroon shirt the day the Aggies go.
Yeah.
I'm going to represent both sides of the house divided. Shout out to Poncho, PonchoOutdoors.com. We push them on the outsiders because we love those shirts. I got my burnt orange one ready. I got to get the maroon one. Ironically, I don't have a maroon one yet. I'm going to get that secured this week, and I'm going to be wearing a different Poncho shirt every day. So I'm going to be ready to go.
I will not be going. I know Orange Bloods is sending a big crew. I'll be holding down the fort here at home base. But if they ever have their media days in Las Vegas, like the Big 12 did, I'm going to fight like tooth and nail to get to go to that one.
So you would have been right there talking to Mike Gundy about all of his DUI possibilities.
Yeah, 1,000 times he's done that. But I probably wouldn't be doing any work if it was in Vegas, but I definitely would go to Vegas. Yeah. So.
Jason Sukamel, live from the slot machines in Vegas. Exactly. That's where I am. Live from the tables. Check out orangebloods.com for that Q&A article, and thank you so much for checking us out on this recruiting hour. I'm seeing almost 1,400 people here live in the Specs chat as we are getting ready to close the doors. Thank you so much. Remember, like, subscribe, and get those notifications. We always say that. Hopefully you understand why, but next week when we get to SEC Media Days, we're going to still have your normal 9 a.m. show. Something will be there, and something will be in the noon spot, and maybe some, but a lot of stuff's going to change next week based on when people are speaking and when we can grab interviews. So get your notifications, because then you find out right before something is about to start or something is about to play or be, aired. You'll find out about it. So get your notifications that way. Thank you so much for all of your support. Jason, go have a good rest of your day, sir.
I'll be sitting at gymnastics for 3 hours. So
gymnastics, Dad. Do you have to stretch to be gymnastics, Dad, or is it just she has to stretch?
Yeah, I don't even think she has to. She's still young enough. She doesn't even have to stretch. But yeah, it hurts me to watch some of the moves those girls do for sure.
Let's say, don't tell me that. Don't tell me you have a gymnastics child that doesn't need to stretch. That's depressing.
Yeah, well, at 12, she's pretty limited.
Oh, geez. All right, a young Simone Biles getting ready to roll. All right, we appreciate you. Your next recruiting hour will be Monday. Possibly, we'll see about recruiting hour next week. Trust me, there'll be a lot of discussions going on next week at SEC Media Days. We'll see if it's a formal recruiting hour or not, but you'll get those notifications and you'll figure it out. Thank you for joining us today. We got an Outsider show tonight at 8:30, talking some more recruiting stuff with Bo Edge and the crew on the Outsider. So come join us. Grab a drink and come join us at 8:30 tonight. We'll be talking some more Texas football. Until then, y'all have yourself a